tell you leadership is about connection, about trust, about being approachable. They'll teach you to be empathetic, likable, inoffensive, to nod more than you speak, to apologize for being direct, to soften your stance so that no one ever feels left out. You'll be taught to manage perception more than results, to curate your image like a brand, not sharpen your mind like a blade. And then one day, when chaos arrives, when the ground splits and everyone looks to you for certainty, you will realize something horrifying. They never respected you. They merely approved of your performance. Leadership in its purest form is not built on affection. It is built on consequence. It is built on consequence. And yet, we live in an age that has recast the leader as an entertainer, someone to be followed not for their clarity, but for their charisma. The job title still says executive or president, but the role has morphed into something softer: smile, nod, offend no one. Leadership by consensus, governance by applause. This is a dangerous lie because when crisis strikes, charm does not hold the line. When hard decisions must be made, popularity becomes a liability. Niccolò Machiavelli saw this centuries ago with brutal precision. It is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. That is not a call to cruelty. It is a call to realism. Because while love is conditional, fear is functional. Love must be renewed. Fear sustains. To lead is not to bend toward the masses. It is to carry the burden of direction, often alone. And if you do it right, if you protect what must be protected, enforce what must be enforced, you will be hated for it. This is not failure. This is the price of clarity. If you are still desperate to be liked, you are not ready to lead. Love, by its nature, is emotional. It is generous but conditional, responsive to moods, outcomes, and convenience. One disappointment, one unpopular call, and love evaporates. This is not cynicism, it is structure. Love is a reward, not a guarantee. It flickers with the weather. And no system can function when its integrity depends on something so soft. We are taught to value love as the highest currency in leadership, to earn loyalty through kindness, to soften hard truths through charisma. But loyalty born of love alone is brittle. It shatters at the first hint of disillusionment. Fear, however, is durable. It does not ask to be inspired. It does not wait for gratitude. Fear creates boundaries that do not shift with sentiment. It installs discipline. It compels order. It persists when applause fades. It ensures continuity when the leader's popularity dies. You cannot lead effectively by chasing the emotional tides of those beneath your command. The crowd may cheer you today and crucify you tomorrow, not because you failed, but because you refuse to flatter their illusions. Machiavelli understood this. He did not glorify fear as an end, but as a mechanism. Fear, rightly applied, protects systems. It enforces clarity. It sharpens the memory of consequence. It separates temporary affection from long-term respect. And it is respect, not affection, that holds armies together, that maintains justice, that prevents decay. A leader who is loved but not respected walks on soft sand. A leader who is feared, not brutally but rationally, builds on rock. Fear keeps the structure intact when storms come. The goal is not to inspire dread, but to install certainty. If I cross this line, there will be consequence. If I follow, there will be order. Fear, when held in check by principle, becomes not oppression, but reliability. Love may draw people near, but only fear, structured, principled fear, keeps the machine running when affection fails. Love makes you popular. Fear keeps the wheels turning. There comes a point in every leader's life when the crowd turns. Not because of failure, but because of success. the kind of success that demands sacrifice. The moment you begin to enforce what others avoid, the moment you draw lines instead of blurring them, the room shifts. Eyes narrow, whispers spread, applause fades. This is not a glitch in leadership. It is the cost of real power. Leadership is not performance. It is pressure. And pressure, when applied correctly, creates tension. The kind that exposes fault lines, the kind that makes people uncomfortable. That discomfort has a direction, and it always flows toward the one holding the standard. You will be blamed for enforcing what others only talk about. You will be accused of cruelty for applying consequence. You will be painted as arrogant for holding your ground, and still, you must hold it. Because the leader is not meant to blend in. The leader is meant to break symmetry, to be the fixed point around which others orbit. That means being the one they speak against, even as they rely on your certainty. To lead is to become a symbolic enemy to those unready for accountability. It is to provoke not by malice, but by necessity. The hatred you attract is often a mirror, not of your cruelty, but of their avoidance, of what they know must be done, but refuse to do themselves. So you become the lightning rod, you take the strike, you stand still as energy rages through the system, and you ground it. That's your job, to take the fury of clarity and remain unmoved, because if no one is willing to be hated, then no one is truly leading. There is no faster way to lose control than to try to please everyone. Appeasement may buy you moments of peace, but they come at the cost of principle. And slowly, silently, your authority begins to rot from within. When a leader seeks affection above outcomes, their decisions become diluted. They hesitate when decisiveness is needed. They soften where structure demands steel. And the people, sensing this, begin to push, test, and eventually ignore. You cannot command respect from those you're afraid to disappoint. You cannot protect a structure when you bend to every cry for comfort. History is full of leaders who tried to be liked into effectiveness and failed. Neville Chamberlain appeased, the crowd cheered, and war came anyway. Countless CEOs caved to social optics, abandoned strategic clarity, and watched their companies lose vision. These were not evil people. They were agreeable, and that was their weakness. Appeasement is not diplomacy. It is surrender dressed in civility. When you lead by consensus, you lose the edge that defines leadership. You trade command for compromise. And once you've made that trade, it's nearly impossible to take it back. Because power, once yielded, is almost never returned. To lead, you must be willing to risk disapproval. To say no when others beg for yes. To endure slander in service of structure. Because those who cannot bear to be disliked will eventually be disobeyed. There is a myth that every strong leader must eventually become a tyrant. That power, once hardened, inevitably slips into cruelty. But that's a myth born of weak hands and softer minds. People who mistake firmness for violence, consequence for oppression. Machiavelli's principle, that it is safer to be feared than loved, was never an invitation to savagery. It was a map for survival. Because power that is respected lasts. Power that begs to be adored does not. Controlled fear is not terror. It is clarity. It is the unmistakable understanding that a line exists, and crossing it has a cost. Not random, not vengeful, but certain. This is the domain of true leadership, where the fear instilled is not personal, but structural. People do not fear you. They fear the standards you uphold. They fear the loss of order. They fear the reintroduction of chaos should your leadership fall. And here's the line that separates strength from tyranny. A tyrant demands loyalty to himself. A leader demands loyalty to principle. The tyrant punishes out of insecurity. The leader disciplines out of necessity. Uncontrolled fear leads to instability. But controlled fear, grounded in fairness and consistency, builds trust. The kind of trust forged not through affection, but through dependability. People may not love you, but they know exactly what you will do when the line is crossed. That is not brutality. That is moral structure. To lead without fear is to allow rot to spread unchecked. To lead with cruelty is to sow rebellion. But to lead with measured fear, to govern with visible consequence and unwavering enforcement, is to protect the very fabric others take for granted. Because the leader who is never feared is one crisis away from irrelevance, and the one who is only feared is one uprising away from collapse. The leader who endures is the one feared just enough to be obeyed and respected enough to never have to remind them why. To command is to be alone, not metaphorically, structurally. The higher you rise in responsibility, the fewer people there are who can truly understand the burden you carry, the decisions you must make, the lines you must draw, and the consequences you alone must bear. Real leadership means choosing clarity over comfort, and in doing so, forfeiting emotional consensus. You do not get to be one of the crowd. You are the one they blame when restraint becomes necessary, when limits must be imposed, when desires must be delayed. And here lies the paradox. The more principled you are, the more isolated you become. Because principle is rigid. It does not adjust to the mood of the room. It demands that you hold fast, not because it is easy, but because no one else will. Approval is a collective phenomenon. Leadership in its truest form is not. It is individual, singular. The act of standing alone while others waver, and continuing to stand even when you're vilified for it. This solitude is not romantic. It is brutal. It means living in a mental landscape where no one else shares your burden, where every decision echoes only inside your own conscience. There are no shoulders to lean on, no applause to drown out doubt. There is only the clarity of what must be done, and the silence that follows when you've done it. And yet, those who lead from need, the need to be liked, the need to be affirmed, will always betray principle for relief. But those who lead from conviction will carry the weight of solitude like armor. Great leaders are not applauded in real time. They are tolerated, tested, and often slandered. But history, if they last long enough, reveals the wisdom of their isolation. If you need company, do not lead. If you need understanding, do not lead. If you need to be celebrated, do not lead. To lead is to walk alone toward fire, knowing you may be burned, and to keep walking anyway. Popularity is for the moment. Legacy is for the ages, and often the two are mutually exclusive. The hated leader is not remembered for their charm. They are remembered for their conviction, for their ability to stand in the storm and not blink. While others chased approval, they chased principle. While others adjusted to sentiment, they enforced structure. And history, though slow to reward, eventually bows to those who held the line. Hated leaders endure not because they are cold, but because they are consistent. Not because they lack empathy, but because they prioritize structure over sentiment. They are not cruel, they are unyielding. And that unyielding presence becomes a pillar that others anchor to when the tides of opinion shift violently. These leaders are not made by adoration, but by resistance. They do not rise because they are carried on shoulders, but because they refuse to kneel when it's easy. Every insult they absorb, every accusation they withstand becomes proof that they cannot be bent by pressure. When crisis erupts, it is not the agreeable who rise, it is the unshakable. The ones willing to be cursed for preventing collapse, the ones who chose long-term survival over short-term applause. Their reward is not affection but impact. This is the paradox. To be truly followed, you must be willing to be feared. Because what people respect, they remember. And what they remember shapes the world. Greatness is rarely recognized in the moment. It is resented, resisted, then revered in hindsight. That is the arc of hard leadership. So if you are hated now, but for the right reasons, endure it, because history has a longer memory than the mob. And in the final reckoning, the hated leader is often the only one left standing. Reputation is not built in comfort. It is carved through conflict. As a leader, you do not get to choose whether you are judged. You only choose what you are judged for. You can spend your life trying to be liked, admired, understood, and still be discarded the moment you disappoint. Or you can lead with brutal clarity, knowing that those who fear your standards today may one day rely on them to survive. Because usefulness outlasts likability, and structure, even when enforced with steel, is more merciful than chaos. The leader's question is not, will they love me? The question is, will they obey when it matters? Will they hold the line I drew long after I'm gone? Those who need approval serve the present. Those who build fear with principles serve the future. So choose your reputation wisely. Do not aim to be remembered for your warmth. Aim to be remembered for your impact, for your backbone, for your refusal to yield when it was easier to smile and say nothing. Because in the end, leadership is not proven in applause. It is proven in what remains standing after the storm. And if they never feared you, they never truly followed you.